Hi everyone, welcome to another tutorial bucket tutorial. I've had a lot of requests for this one, which is to create a convincing undead vampire zombie style skin makeup. There's plenty of tutorials on how to do this on the net, but I've got to say I'm not entirely convinced they do such a fabulous job. So we'll have a look at this method, which I think works really good. It will make your skin look like this. I like this because it's not just a straight desaturate, it has colour, ambient light reflections, it looks like it fits in with its environment. It's not as difficult as you might think, it just requires a couple of good selections and some adjustment layers. I'll just turn this one off. Okay, I'll go to my channels palette where I have already made a selection which I'm going to use, which is going to choose only the skin, but not the lips and teeth, not the eyes, not the eyebrows, not the hair. So I'm using a PC, so I'll control click on that to make the selection. If you're using a Mac and you've got a nice selection saved away, that will be a command click. Go back to my layers palette and we add in from the new adjustment layer button a color balance layer. Okay, now there are three settings that we're going to play with: shadows, midtones and highlights. I'll start with the midtones. What we're doing is we're going to be pulling down the amount of red saturation and introducing a blue-green tinge to the skin so it looks convincingly undead. So I'll just drag that down. The magenta green, well, we want it to look a little bit green, so I'll push this up a little bit to introduce a slightly greenish tinge to it. And the yellow blue, that can pretty much stay where it is. Might just knock it down just a little bit for the fun of it, -3. Okay, I'll go to the shadows. Now in the shadows, again, we need to pull down the amount of red, move it towards cyan. Not as much this time, so somewhere around -40, 45 should be good for this particular image. The magenta green slider, well, we're going to increase this because we want it, again, more green, so it's getting that green-blue tinge. The yellow blue, again, push it up to about the same level, maybe a little bit higher, just as long as it's close, and that should balance nicely. Okay, finally we do the highlights. In the highlights, the cyan red, I only need to knock that down to about -5. Doesn't need much for the highlights, but where we will be making some changes is in the yellows. Now first I'll just do the magenta green. I'll just nudge that one up to about +5, just a small change, not much. But the yellows, we need to have plenty of yellow. Now if I just drag that to the extreme, you can see what it's doing. It's pumping up the luminosity of the highlights in the skin. So we need to push this up to about 20, -20, -22. And we'll say OK. Alright, now obviously this is far more saturated than we actually want. So we come to the next adjustment layer. I'll just control click on my existing layer mask. Nice little shortcut for saving time. That's command click for you Mac users. And we lay down from the new adjustment layer button a hue and saturation layer. Now in the hue and saturation layer, what we're going to do is we're going to take some of these existing color tones and we're going to control both their saturation and their lightness. Now we could just go straight for the saturation slider, set to master mode and just drag it down like that. And that might be good enough for you, but hey, I'm a little bit fussier about how this all works, so I'm going to do it the slow and steady way. I'm going to go to the drop down and I'm going to first say, right, I would like to play around with the yellows in this image. So I pick exactly the shades of yellows that I'm after. When you move your mouse pointer out, you can click and choose the actual yellow tone. If you want to pick up more yellow tones, use the plus eyedropper and you can pick up a few yellow tones, and this will gradually expand the range that's being chosen for the color range to be selected. Okay, saturation for the yellows. Drag it down and that takes out the last remaining bit of humanity, but it still has some color tone in there. If you want to be very fancy, lightness can be adjusted upwards a little bit and that will increase it with a little bit of brightness, but very, very small changes are all that's needed for this one to work. Okay, that's the yellows done. Next thing is I've got all these green, blue, cyan tinges that are very, very strong. I'm just going to choose cyans, then take the eyedropper once again, and I'll choose the worst of those oversaturated tones, so it selects it in the color range at the bottom of the hue saturation, and again, take saturation, pull down the saturation, and that will take out the worst of that tinge. Don't go too far, you want to keep some of it, but just enough so it's not overly saturated. And that starts to look pretty good. Okay, other areas that are oversaturated? Well, just choose another colour range. For example, we might go for blues. This is just to start you off. Then we go down and we choose the area that we think is oversaturated, and that will adjust correctly the colour range that you're trying to fool around with. And it even labels it for you in the drop down, calling it greens 3 or yellow 4 or whatever, and however many times you do this. So once again, take saturation, pull it down a little bit. Yep, now it's starting to look the business. Maybe increase the lightness just a touch. Not very much, just a little bit. And I think I'll live with this as it is. The signs around the eyes, are they oversaturated? Might be. We can give those a try as well. I'll just go over here. Oops, don't want to use yellows. We've already adjusted that. I'll choose reds. That's a good way of cheating. Okay, and we'll just adjust that down a little bit. Ah, yes, that's a little bit nicer. Lightness, no, I think we'll just leave the lightness alone, basically. That's all right as it is. We'll say okay. All right, let's take a look at what we've done so far. Here is before. Here is after. That is a pretty good looking skin makeup. You can take this a lot further if you want to, of course. You can keep on making additions to the selection areas, and you can keep on adjusting the colours. If you really want to monster this up, you can start adding things in like eyeshadows and special eye effects to really make it look convincing.